Hello everyone, I'm Sahid and thank you for clicking this video. I'm so happy that you're here and watching this video. So for the past few days now, I have been reading Canadian literature as a part of a book club that I'm in at my college. And by recording this video, it's my way of being consistent with reading and also just improving my avid reading because I for a long time I've always wanted to be an avid reader, and reading is something that brings me joy. I don't use social media, and often the only thing I do try to do is like watch YouTube videos. I don't use other social medias like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I don't use any of that, and so books has been my way for a few months now, and I think over a year now. I've been reading and trying to just consume books because I think reading gives so much back, and it's always something that I enjoy doing. And so today, I'm going to continue on my series of reading Canadian literature, specifically this book that is called Moon of the Crusted Snow, and it is by waubgeshig, and I've been reading it now for a couple days now, and it's been something I've been enjoying, sharing with you guys my journey, and getting to know like the characters and just grasping the words and the story being told with you guys. And so today we'll be reading chapter 3, and yes, I'm excited that you're here, and thank you. Okay. And okay, I think it's always important to do a recap of sort of what happened in the previous chapter. So in chapter 2, we're sort of introduced early on with a few sentences of when the family is sort of waking up in their morning routine. So I think it's also important to mention the character's name. So the main character we're first introduced to in the first chapter and second chapter, in the first chapter particularly, is Even White Sky. He is a man of indigenous identity. He lives in a small indigenous community known as the Anishinaabe community, which is in northern Canada, and he's married and has been married for a few years, as we come to know in the first chapter, that he's married to Nicole McLeod, and they have 2 kids. The first one that we're introduced to is Maigan, and then the other one is Nagans. And Maigan is a 5-year-old boy who is currently attending school, or who recently started school, and Nagans is a girl, and she's 3-year-old, and we're sort of introduced to them in chapter 1 and chapter 2. So in chapter 2 particularly, we sort of just see how the family wakes up, prepare the kids for school, and then we have a little moment in which Even is talking with his 2 kids, having a, them, because he told them about, the other day when he went to go hunt, he brought a moose home, or slash a bull home, and he has to sort of cut the bull, and so his kids are like, "Oh, Daddy, I can't," they're excited, they're eager, they can't wait to like do this one day as well, because they know it's something that their dad does very often, and so whenever he tells them something like that, they're very eager, and so that was mentioned in chapter 2, and then later on, not even later on, but I think the main thing to mention here is the setting. We're still in a setting which is very cold. It's winter. It's around November during this time, and so it's very cold. And they have this issue in which they have no electricity. They currently have no electricity. They're not able to watch TV. The satellites, the radios are not really working, and so we're sort of introduced to that in the first and second chapter, and it's still a prevalent setting to emphasize on, because it's affecting and sort of showing how like there's some certain changes. So for example, in chapter 2, we see that the main character, even, instead of surprised at the fact that his kids are talking in the mornings, because they don't normally do that. So before school, they're watching TV, and so that's emphasized on. And I think that shows that things are changing in a way within this whole story, and as the plot continues to build up. I'm looking forward to seeing what other things do they start to realize. They're like either getting worse, yeah, only getting worse, because if there's no electricity, it's a negative, sort of circumstance, and so I'm pretty sure things are probably gonna get worse as I continue to read. But yeah, and then one last thing is that we also get introduced to Evan's sort of close friend, Ivan, um, and we have a little moment in which Ivan comes over. He also doesn't have electricity where he lives, and we have a little moment in which Ivan remembers that he was supposed to text Ivan, but due to the no electricity, he was unable to come. But Ivan ends up coming to see them anyways, or come to see Ivan anyways, and then they work on the muse together, kind of the parts. And yeah, that's sort of basically how chapter 2 ended. And so now I will read chapter 3, but I hope that sort of brief introduction to, not introduction, but recap to what we've read helps you, gives you a little, little bits. But if you've not watched the other videos, I would recommend you watch those 2 chapters first before you listen to this. Okay, I will start now. Okay, chapter 3. The days were growing shorter, but it had been a mostly sunny fall, and the unusual run of blue skies had so far kept winter at bay. Deep into the afternoon, it was another vibrant day. Evan grabbed his sunglasses that lay beside his useless cell phone and perched them on top of his mesh fishing hat. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in the television on the wall. He had been off for almost 2 days now. He thought of how much he had paid for both the phone and the TV on a trip to the city back in the spring, and he was annoyed that he currently could use neither. Think it's the weather? Even had asked Isaiah while they worked on the muse. Doubt it. Probably just bad receivers. We can never have nice things on the res. Even smiled, remembering the conversation. He turned to the kitchen and opened the fridge to grab 2 large bags of moose meat. Each clear bag contained a large shoulder cut, with the dates scrawled on the outside in black marker. He went outside to his truck, opened the door, and threw the meat on the passenger seat. He hoisted himself in and started up his vehicle. The drive to his parents' place was short. He tuned into the community radio station, Res 98.1, on the FM dial. A bluesy song filled the cab. Well, at least we still got the radio, he thought. We might as well be going back in time. Res 98 transmitted from a portable outside the band office, and it mostly broadcast generic, pre-programmed playlists interspersed with community announcements and weather updates. The live stuff depended on when Vinny, the resident radio personality, was in the office. Gravel knocked into the truck's wells as Even drove through the quiet res. It was cold. It was too cold for baseball or fishing, but not cold enough for ice at the outdoor rink. So he figured that most of the kids were indoors, playing video games or watching DVDs. He passed the rink on the right, empty and dark under its gray sheet metal roof. The rink was another recent addition. If that was here when I was younger, he thought, I might have made something of myself in hockey. But in truth, Even had never really wanted to leave this place. The comfort and familiarity of his community and the pull of the land made him a proud res lifer. After finishing high school, he'd had no desire to go on to post-secondary education, even to a community college in one of the nearer towns, alone any other small northern cities like Gibson or Everton Mills. Job opportunities on the rest were few, but neither was the competition stiff, especially in maintenance and infrastructure. His father, Don, worked for the roads department, so he started there. Even had worked part time at first and spent the rest of his time hunting and fishing. Even turned right onto the third road past the rink, then pulled into the fourth driveway on the left. He had checked that he had checked that they were home before leaving, amused that he had resorted to the landline instead of the usual one-line text to his dad. He parked in front of the bungalow with red vinyl siding and a high basement, the same house he'd grown up in. He got out of his truck and walked around to the back, where he knew his father was tanning a moose head. Careful bent over like that, Even said as he approached his father. It ain't good for your back. Plus one of them bulls might see his chance to get his revenge. He laughed loudly. Dan kept scraping the thick yellow hide tied to a rectangular stretcher. Make yourself useful and grab that scraper down there, he said. Even saw another scraping tool on top of the large blue plastic bin that his father often used for soaking hides. He picked it up and took his place to Dan's right. They worked silently at first, as they often did. It usually wasn't until a job was done that they spoke. Whether tanning a hide, cleaning a haul of fish from a net, or tackling repairs around their homes, they were business at first and fun later. Even believed that it had taught him about working hard and getting the job done. Even dug the fleshing device hard into the softening hide, scraping flesh and fat away from the skin. Dan had been at this since the evening before and was nearly finished. He didn't really need Even's help, but moments like this were special. It was an intimacy they kept to themselves. When the hide was completely cleaned, the two men stood back to look at their hardy work. Future moccasins, gloves, and pouches. The thick brown hair on the hide still needed to be pulled, so the job wasn't done yet, but it wouldn't take much longer. Dan turned to Even. Smoke break? Yeah, good call. They each pulled a red rectangular box out of the left pocket of their hunting jackets that were identical except in color. Almost simultaneously, they each removed a cigarette, lit it, and put the pack and a lighter back in the jacket. Even inhaled deeply and tipped his head back, exhaling up into the cool November air. Dan sat down on one of the log stools close to the plastic hide containers. Dan brought the cigarette to his heavy lips. His black mustache tickled the top of the smoke as he took a drag. He looked at the ground between his heavy boots and pushed the smoke out of his nose. Then he looked up at Even. So how much meat you got then? Enough. Even paused. I got another one yesterday. Yeah, that's what Easy said. He was by here just about an hour ago. Even should have known the Moccasin telegraph would have been active. He wasn't surprised that his father had already heard the news. I brought some for you guys, he said. Better bring it in to your mother then. They finished their smokes in silence, taking turns looking up from the ground to examine the land around them. Each had nothing to say, and that was fine. They said what they needed to when they needed to. Okay, I'm gonna take that in to mom then. Yeah, go ahead. I'll start a fire, then we'll finish cleaning that hide. Alright. When Even walked into the house, the entire main floor smelled like the muse roast that was in the oven, a familiar and comforting aroma. His mother, Patricia, was sitting at the desk on the far side of the living room. She rapped the black computer mounts loudly on the desktop. The goddamn internet isn't working, she announced without turning around. Come here, Eve. Fix this for me. Okay, just wait then, her son replied. Where do you want me to put these? He held up the clear bags of moose meat. She turned to look and smiled, her cheeks pushing into the bottom of her glasses. Ever the good son. Just put that on the counter and I will take them downstairs to the freezer later. I gotta rearrange the other one your dad just got. Even set the meat down on the scarred white countertop in the kitchen. He could navigate this house with his eyes closed, and every step through each room was like muscle memory. The heavy oak dinner table anchored the house, the center of so much family history. He went back into the living room to assist his mother, walking past the comfortable black leather couch, love seat, and armchair, and wishing they had been there when he was a child. He was a kid. They were all so soft and they still smelled new. He stood behind her as she slammed the black mouse again. What the hell was wrong with this? I gotta check my email. Even smirked, knowing that his mom was hooked on online I don't know how to pronounce that word, unfortunately, tournaments. There wasn't any money in it, but there was intentional glory, and she liked the idea of playing her favorite game against people from all over the continent. How long has yours been out? He asked. Just since yesterday afternoon, I was chatting with your sister online, and then it crashed. Then I tried to text her, and that didn't work either. Even raised his eyebrow. Your TV's not working either, eh? No, not since around the same time. I thought all these new dishes and towers and stuff were supposed to be better. Well, I guess it's not all totally reliable all the way up here, he assured her and himself. All this stuff doesn't go out as much as it used to. Yeah, I guess so. Now you have more time to make supper. Maybe we'll actually eat on time for once. She elbowed him in the gut. Oh, you shut up, she huffed as she stood up to go to the kitchen. The truth is, Even thought, these things do work better than they used to. High speed internet access that had been in the community for barely a year. It was provided by the band but connected to servers in the south via satellite. Still, the fact that TV, phone, and internet were all down at once made Even uneasy. Metal pots and pans crashed together, and Even realized he was staring blindly at the computer screen that read, "Can't connect to server." He blinked hard and gave his head a little shake. So, when are Nick and the kids coming? Patricia asked from the kitchen. Even cleared his throat. I don't know. I'll go get them in time for supper, I guess. She said she was gonna get the kids to help her make pies when I left. What kind? Even smiled, picturing his children on chairs across the counter from his wife, watching intently as she opened a can of cherries. I'm not telling. It's gonna be a surprise. Ooh. Pat placed a big steel pot of peeled potatoes in the sink. She turned on the tap to fill the pot and grabbed a salt shaker from the top of the stove, shaking salt into the water. I'm gonna head back outside, he said. Okay then. Outside, Dan had begun to strip the hide of its fur. It was usually the easiest step in the process, and he appeared to be making good progress. The dead leaves on the ground rustled around Evan's feet. About time, Dan said without looking up. The son took a spot beside his father again. What you think about what you thinking about doing with this one? I don't know. Maybe your mom can make something out of it. Patricia usually made moccasins and sold them to trading posts and souvenir shops throughout the north. It was good extra money. They stood quietly again. That comfortable, easy, important silence between a father and a son fell upon them. Even pulled out his pack of cigarettes once more, and so did Dan. They took long, soothing drags on their smokes, staring into the hide and occasionally into the forested horizon. Without turning, Dan said, I had a dream last night. Heaven's head turned slowly in his father's direction. It was night. It was cold, kind of like this time of year. But it was the springtime. I don't know how I could tell because it was so dark, but I just knew that it was. I was walking through the bush. I remember I had my shotgun over my shoulder. I had a backpack on too. I don't know why or what was in it. His sentences came out slowly, with a precise rhythm. Even dragged on his cigarette again, transfixed by his father's unusually candid speech. There was this little hill in the distance. I could see it only because it looked like there was something burning on the other side. There was this orange glow. It was pretty weird. It wasn't any place I recognized. Nowhere around here. Anyways, so I kept walking towards the hill. The light on the other side got brighter. I knew it was a big fire the closer I got. Even couldn't remember the last time his father had spoken so much at once. He wasn't known as a storyteller or a talented orator. He never talks about dreams, even thought. Oh no, no, that's funny. Dan continued. As I went up that hill, I started to see the flames. They were so high. The fire roared, kind of like the rapids down the river. It was popping and cracking real loud, and then I got to the top. Evan's face tightened, and the hair on the back of his neck stood up. The whole field on the other side of that hill was on fire. I couldn't see nothing in that field except fire, but it wasn't spreading. Then I looked around and seen a bunch of you guys standing and looking at it. It was you, Cam, Izzy, some of your buddies, some of your buddies, and even Terry. There were a bunch more too, but I couldn't tell who they were because they were too far away. You were all spread out, just looking at the fire. Even inhaled deeply. His cigarette had burned down to the filter between his fingers, singering the orange paper. Everyone was wearing hunting gear and had their guns in their hands, but no one had any orange on, like right now. And when I looked closer at your face, you looked real skinny. Cam too, and the other guys looked weak. It was pretty weird. Then I understood what was going on. We had just put the burn on to try to get some muse in. I can't remember the last time we had to do that around here, but everyone in my dream must have been hungry. No one was saying nothing. I looked over at you. He paused and turned to look at Even. You looked at me. You looked scared. And that's when I woke up. Dan went silent and Even stared at his feet. When he looked back to his father's face, Dan's eyes were locked on the bush in the distance. Well, maybe if you didn't hunt out the muse this year, we wouldn't have to worry about it. Even blurted, with a nervous chuckle. We got a good haul of them anyways. He anxiously watched to see if Dan's hardened, blank face would break. When the corners of his dad's mouth When the corners of his dad's mouth turned up in a small smile, Even was relieved. You young burgers are the ones hunting them out, Dan said, as he playfully pushed his son in the shoulder. Should have never thought you had to shoot a gun. They both laughed and turned to go back into the house. And that is the end of chapter 3. Wow, okay. Pretty interesting. Not very long, like many of these chapters are. They aren't that long, but they're all very interesting. Let's do a little sort of overview of what we just read, right? Um, so obviously it's still winter. Even sort of decided to go to his parents' place. And on his way, he made sure to like I said, one common theme that I think it's sort of crucial in the Anishinaabe community that I've sort of mentioned in like previous videos is the importance of giving back. Giving back to those that you love, either family, relatives, loved ones. So even decided to take the mousse that he had in the refrigerator to his parents as a way of giving back. And so we noticed that even it sort of is on way to his parents, and then we get introduced to his father, who goes by Dan, and then we're introduced to his mother, Patricia. Two of very interesting characteristics. So far, I would describe his dad as, it's kind of tough, a tough man. Obviously, there's a moment in which Dan comes in, and I think he was trying to make a joke about his father being bent, but Dan is like, no, you better go make yourself useful and go grab a scraper, which I think might have been a joke as well. Like how father and son relationships are. But I think he's kind of a tough, funny sort of individual, and so they do things together. We notice that Even believes his father has taught him some things, such as doing the work first before anything else. So as soon as he gets to his dad's place, or gets to his parents' place, his dad is like, let's get to work. And then they're able to do whatever they want to do after working. And I find that interesting. As we continue to read, there's obviously still no internet. And we come across when Patricia went out, even goes inside the house, and then Patricia is like losing her mind over the internet not working. She's like, this goddamn internet is still not working. And I find that really funny. But it's not funny because obviously this just shows that, again, the setting. There's still no electricity. This is not good. They're not able to do things which they're sort of adapted to doing, having has access to like high internet, satellites, being able to watch TV. But now things are changing slowly. And yeah, and then we just have a little moment with the dad telling a story, which is something Even mentioned that his dad hasn't done that in a while, so he found that slightly not common. And yeah, he tells a story, and then we have a little moment in which Even makes a joke, and then they laugh and go back into the house after um, being outside for a while, cutting the hides and smoking for a little bit during their break. And yeah, so chapter 3 was pretty much a little moment with the main character, Even White Sky, and his parents, Dan and Patricia. And yeah, it was not that much pages, so it wasn't that much to read on. But thank you so much once again for clicking this video and joining me. I will be, reading more and posting more. Today's a very nice day actually. So the temperature sort of dropped, and it feels nice outside. I got out this morning, and I was like, "Oh, it's a little chilly out here," and I brought my little brown jacket just in case it starts to freeze. But thank you for watching. I'm always happy to do this. I'm happy that you're always here to watch and support me on this journey as a upcoming. Sorry, oh, my book just fell. um, okay. Anyways, as an upcoming YouTuber and a forever long curious individual, and which is why I think it's good to give you guys a little background of how I got this username. So my name is obviously Sahid, but if you look down at my YouTube channel username, it's Inquisitive Sa. And Sa is just like the first 3 letters of my name. So Inquisitive is just like a curious person. And so I think it was important for me to have something about myself within my username. So yeah, if you ever thought, where did he get this username from? That's where I got it from. But yes, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful one. Thank you. Bye.